Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you guys doing today? I thank you again for participating in the interview and all that. Very excited. And again, before I begin, if there's any questions, want me to cut out and post, I'll totally remove it. It's all about cattails mostly, so.
That makes sense. And thanks for asking for an interview. By the way, that's always fun. So.
It's really exciting when someone asks for something that isn't a key.
Thank you. Oh man. So I guess to begin, tell us about yourselves and Falcon Development and all that.
I'll go ahead and start, and then Becca can chime in. I'm Tyler. I'm the lead developer at Falcon Development. So I worked on the game design, the programming, and the pixel art for Cattails.
I'm Beka, and nobody knows what I do for Cattails. I don't know what I do for Cattails. I did write some dialogue for the game. I also do a lot of like the behind-the-scenes businessy stuff. Any sort of miscellaneous task that that I don't want to do, I just kind of let her handle it. I make sure things happen.
Totally understandable. So whenever I do my videos, I kind of go through like this like rabbit hole of like information, and I was looking up, Falcon Development, and followed you guys on Twitter. So I guess my first question is, I'm gonna start with you, Beka. What got you into marketing, and how was it like marketing for Cattails?
Yeah, marketing was something that I was always interested in. In college, I almost studied marketing, but college is so... I don't know how anybody knows what they're gonna do in college. I don't know how people decide that. But I took a couple of classes anyways, so I was like, I don't know, it's just something I was always interested in to an extent, and I was always really excited about Cattails. It was something that like Tyler kind of just like proposed, like, hey, I'm gonna make this game, I'm like, that sounds cool, we need to show everybody, we need to tell everybody, so it kind of came naturally, I guess. And it's a really easy thing to market. I mean, who doesn't love cats? And also I love the game myself. And it's definitely, Cattails is a type of game that I personally like. It's the type of game that I personally would put a bunch of hours in. If you look at the other stuff that I play, I love Stardew Valley. I grew up on Harvest Moon. I actually speedran Harvest Moon 64 for a while. I was really into speedrunning that game.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's easy to get into marketing when you're already passionate about something, I guess. And it's easy... I don't know. I'm like bragging. I feel like I'm really bragging about our game right now.
By all means, brag. Like the game, I had a great time playing Cattails. So by all means, brag as much as you wish to.
Well, thank you. That's really good to hear that.
Yeah.
So, and then similar question to you, Tyler, is what got you into game design? Like, and how was it like designing Cattails?
Yeah, it's been a very long journey to get here, I guess. So when I was a kid, I really liked playing video games, as most kids do. And so me and my brother, we played mostly like GameCube and N64. That was like all those games,
Same.
like Luigi's Mansion, Super Mario Sunshine, all those. And we were like so invested in the like Nintendo games of the era. So then one day we found this like Mario clone that was like shareware out there on the internet, and we were like, oh wow, you can play Mario on your computer, and what's more, somebody like made this, and that means anybody in theory could make it. So we started like looking into like, okay, what does that mean? What does it look like to like make a game,
Right.
And so at a pretty early age, maybe like 10 or so, we started just playing around with like, what are the tools out there? How do people make video games? And obviously we weren't any good at it because we were just trying to like replicate the big titles of the day. And as like 10-year-olds, you can't really make much progress on that front when you're up against a team of 100 professionals.
I feel.
Right. So we just kind of started experimenting, I guess. And we would throw together like these tiny little games that we would put together in probably like a weekend or maybe a week. And if you do that a couple hundred times, you start to like figure out like what's fun and what's not fun and what's just like a terrible idea and should never be attempted, I guess. And I think that was sort of my introduction to it, because I never took classes or anything like that for like game design. It was just sort of a lot of trial and error, I guess you could say.
Right. No, I feel because I kind of had a similar background, at least back in high school. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Cattails was made in Yo-Yo Games Maker, right?
Right. So in Game Maker Studio, which is published by Yo-Yo Games.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I remember seeing somewhere, like I was browsing through the wiki articles here and there. So, because I've experimented with Yo-Yo Games as well. I haven't really used it since high school though, but it was like I made a couple of games. I do not share those ones publicly because they're terrible. But I feel where you're coming from on like wanting to make games and having a passion for that, and that's awesome.
Well, it's just really cool how accessible it is nowadays, where like anybody, I was surprised when I sort of started with it how you could get a tool like Game Maker, or there's 1,000 other like it, download it on your computer in a day. It's usually a free version of it available, and then you can make like something that's playable, like not a good game, but something that's playable pretty easily.
I feel I had, again, when I did stuff with Game Maker, it was like they were terrible, but it was like I made this.
Yeah, it's a cool feeling.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna move on to my first question. Is what was the inspirations to Cattails? And I remember when I was looking at the wiki, it said it was a plan that was like 3 years in development in the making. So what was like the inspirations, and like how did Cattails become to be, kind of thing?
There's so many different inspirations, I feel like. And Beka and I both have some similar ones and some different ones. So it's kind of like a big, a melting pot of 1,000 different ideas.
Yeah,
but
it's a crazy origin story, really.
Yeah. I would say that from a game design perspective, the primary inspirations were the Harvest Moon games, particularly Friends of Mineral Town and Harvest Moon 64, which we both played extensively as kids. And so we really wanted to take some of those ideas and switch it up a little bit. So we got rid of the farming aspect of it, and we introduced these other things. And I was like, well, I really kind of want to make it my own. So another thing that inspired Cattails pretty heavily is this book series called
The
Warriors. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, my sister was really big into it back in the day.
That sounds very, very familiar, because the reason that I was even interested in the book series is because my sister was super into it. She had all the books. She would tell me everything about it.
Mine did too.
And I'd never actually read it, so like I didn't even know. I knew what the books were about, but I had never read one, if that makes sense.
No, I feel.
But I was like, oh, that's such a cool idea, and like, there's so many people out there who would love something like that in like a video game form, and it's like the perfect jumping point to making something that's really unique and like spitting it out into, this wacky world with talking moles and like you're living in a forest, and then bringing back some of the elements from the Harvest Moon series, like the day-night cycle and the romance system, and it just I felt like it worked pretty well. So those are probably the two biggest inspirations.
Right. That's awesome though. And again, my extensive knowledge of the Warriors cats is just that the names of the cats have an element and a body limb. That's that's as far as my knowledge goes. But that's awesome though.
Yeah.
But I guess it's kind of answered from your response, but what was like your overall goal with Cattails, which making a Stardew, but not Stardew, Stardew too.
Sure.
I was gonna say in my review I said like Stardew at least like probably 20 something times, so
yeah, well, like Stardew is based off of Harvest Moon, and we're based off of Harvest Moon, so like
the original Stardew.
See, and I'm like a huge Harvest Moon fan, and so that's why I think we tend to say Harvest Moon instead of Stardew. But don't get me wrong, I have hundreds of hours of Stardew on Steam, so like.
Well, and we use Stardew Valley in some of our marketing, because we were very fortunate early on to get an article on Kotaku that it's literally just like maybe 2 sentences, so it's really not like an article, it's just a shout out kind of a deal.
Right.
But in those 2 sentences, they wrote the statement, Cattails looks like Stardew Valley except cats.
And we're
now,
like, yeah, that's us.
We're like, yeah, let's just
that
use
is
that
true.
as like a tagline. So now we use that everywhere in our marketing. So that's probably why you jump to that.
Right. That's so awesome. But was there anything that you had to like cut when producing I'm sorry, that's
You're gonna say something.
Cattails. Was there like anything that you guys had to cut due to like time
I have
constraints?
one. Well, this was not time restraints. The problem that we came across at one point is that we started playing Undertale. And
Love Undertale.
Undertale is awesome. And we love it. However, it's kind of dark. And we wanted to keep Cattails light and airy, but then we started realizing that like more and more, like we were getting, like we loved Undertale so much when we were playing it, that we started bringing elements of that into our game. And then there was a time where I didn't realize that like Tyler had been working on stuff and I was testing it and my cat died. And it became the most horrendous, like you hear like this heartbeat and then the heart like stops beating. And like I don't know, like death
This
starts
text
talking
appears.
to you,
It's very
and
poetic.
it was really artsy. It was beautiful and creepy, and would scare the crap out of a 10-year-old, I think. so we had
we
to
toned that
start.
one down. It still has some of the elements of that left over, but it's we definitely toned that down. Another one that ended up getting cut too is some dialogue. When you start making a game like this in this genre and you have your design idea and your document and everything, and you're like, oh, it's going to be great, there's going to be 50 characters and they're all going to talk to each other and they're going to remark on every little possible thing that could ever happen in your world, and you start to learn pretty quick that like if you want to do that, you better be an author, not a game developer.
Right.
So I wrote down this framework that was like, okay, this is every piece of dialogue that every cat could possibly have. And then I started filling it in. And like, I remember the like feeling of hopelessness in that, because I started like writing that for the first, I think 3 or 4 characters. They had like just an obscene amount of dialogue. And I was like, this is getting nowhere. Like the game does not visually look different. And I've been at this for weeks at this point, and it just feels like I'm not making any progress. And so I ended up doing a pass where I went back and I simplified and removed some of that dialogue. And so there's still a lot of dialogue. There's still a ton of situational stuff. It still took me probably months to get all of the dialogue for all the characters. But it definitely was one of those things where it was like, wow, that was a great idea, but I started a little strong, a little too ambitious, and need to give that a second pass.
I feel. But so my next question for you guys is, what was the biggest hurdle you guys had during production of Cattails?
Well, it's a production issue, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
That's a hard question. And
I guess like production and game development wise.
Yeah.
So for a question for both of you guys.
there's just been so many. I'm like PTSD. Making a game is so hard.
I've got one if
well,
you...
I don't know. You go ahead, because I feel like mine is like a long list of little things that really nothing, like there wasn't anything that was like just awful that I can think of.
Yeah.
Sorry, cats are making noises in the background. Hopefully you don't hear them.
Mine is like a...
My cat hasn't started like getting my attention yet. Eventually, I guarantee you during this interview.
Yeah,
we brought our cats into the room so they wouldn't start scratching at the door, so we had to think about that one. For me, I have like a category of sort of a productional thing that it was definitely a challenge. It was definitely a hurdle because it was unexpected, and that was the sheer amount of time required to do the non-game development work of putting out a video game.
Right.
Because I'd only ever, like, in the past, I'd fiddled around and I'd made some much simpler projects, and it's like, once you have a game ready, you just kind of like either keep it on your hard drive where nobody sees it, or you put it out on some website and you hope that a dozen people find it and write a comment. And that's like it. That's where it starts, that's where it ends.
Right.
And for Cattails, we ended up basically having to become not only our own developers, but our own publishing house as well, because we don't have a publisher. And publishers do a lot. So in terms of just like the PR and the customer support that you end up doing and the business stuff, because you're like working with all these backends with these partnering storefronts, and you're signing legal documents and you're filling out tax forms. I mean, all that stuff adds up to probably thousands of hours of work. And I had no idea. So it's kind of a, seat of the pants, figure it out as we go sort of a thing.
Yeah. And I think some of the challenges too that we had was getting the game to Switch was a lot more involved than we had foreseen, because we got it on Steam first, and then just going through all of like the rules for Switch, which like Nintendo is super great to work with. Like a lot of things were really good, but it was also just a different hurdles we had never faced before, like making sure that our marketing materials, say like Nintendo Switch, like the correct words, or like the Joy-Cons, the terminology of it really. And like in game, like we have to make sure like we don't like we name the buttons correctly. Like there's just like a lot of like naming conventions and stuff where before you kind of just we could say whatever we wanted, and then with Switch like there is like they have a standard. Yeah.
Right. That is really cool to hear. Like as someone who's never done that stuff before, like that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, even like in marketing materials and just making sure, because like we'd have to have like images approved by them that were representing the brand well.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
which we had just never, which I mean I feel like for if a publisher watches this, then they'll be like, oh, that's easy, as we do all the time. We had no idea what we were doing. So
we had to figure it all out.
And I think that we are very, at my core, at least my personality wise, I'm such a people pleaser. And so I think that the other challenge of being an indie game developer is we kind of see everything. Like not everything, but like probably everything. I don't know. Like when we go on Twitter, I can't help it. I think it's just in my nature. I go on Twitter, I'll search cattails, even the plant. Like I see so much stuff, or like an artist came out with a song called Cattails. I know about it, like if anybody posts like criticism, it's good because I see a lot of great like fan art. We have a fantastic community, but like if someone says, oh, I have this bug, this isn't working, it's really hard. Like this is Falcon Development. This is our whole team. So if there's like a bug, then it's like one of us, most likely Tyler, has to fix it. Or I'm gonna be like testing it, like, oh, can I recreate that bug? Like,
right.
What can we do? Because I would hate that someone would have like a negative experience. And I think that sometimes people don't understand that we're an indie game too. And so they're like, we're contacting Falcon Development about, like how this game is awful because of some bug or something, I don't know. And it's like, hello, my name's Beka. Like I'm just like we're just
small shop
it's like I don't know. Yeah, so there's that whole layer too where we just wanted to make a good game. We just wanted to make a video game. We didn't like think about running a business, I guess.
Right.
So
no, I completely understand that. I was gonna say, I do like in my review, I do have a few criticisms here and there, but
go for it.
Absolutely.
I mean, the thing is, we've seen so many, like we've seen a lot of great stuff. We've seen a lot of bad stuff, and the thing is too, like that is our first, like that's the only big thing we have released, and that we made like I don't know, that was our first big project. And so we probably see the flaws more so than you do. Or like there's flaws that we're waiting, or maybe you'll have new ones that like we've known about, but we're just hoping nobody else will see.
Right. And to add on to that, constructive criticism is always welcome, obviously. We have a forum where there's like a bug report section. And I read every post that gets posted there, because there's honestly like a lot of really good stuff where the game it's kind of an experiment in a way. It's sort of iterative, and so you put it out there and you say what worked with people, what didn't work with people, and the only way to really know like what was good about your game and what you should focus on in like future projects is by like hearing what people didn't like, basically.
Right. That is like that is like a good, insightful thing to like. I mean, again, I went through art school and stuff, so having criticism definitely helped me out with like.
Well, and as an artist, I'm sure that you look at your own project and you're like, oh, like the lighting's off here, you know, all that kind of stuff. The color's not quite right, something like that.
Yeah, no, I go through that all the time. Like all of my older stuff, I'm like, I want to retcon my whole portfolio and just put up my better stuff.
Big mood, big mood.
But so my next question is so when I was again doing my research, you guys reached your Kickstarter goal within 6 hours. How did that feel? Because that sounds amazing.
It was incredible, and that day was a blur. We had spent, I mean, probably 6 months researching, you know, what should we expect with a crowdfunding campaign? What metrics should we be using to estimate things? How should we be projecting this? And so we arrived at what I thought was a pretty reasonable but conservative number, because we did want to hit the goal, but we didn't want to undersell it, I guess. And it ends up that we did exactly that. We completely undersold it because the goal that we put down was just
like 12 times the at the end.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I'm sorry, go on.
No, it was amazing. But yeah, that entire day, I don't know. It was like I was sitting at my computer and I was, you know, hoping for a couple dozen people to see it and care about it. And then like we just were hitting F5 on the keyboard, just refreshing the page. And it was like every time we did that, there was like, you know, a couple new backers.
I do remember that day. So that was like, we'd just gotten married that year and I was still in college, and I would come home and I would like make like a little lunch, like grilled cheese sandwiches or something. And because I had no idea how to cook, I don't know, but we'd like sit down and we'd have lunch together in between like my classes and stuff. And I like made lunch, we sat down, and like I like put his plate down first, like had to go to like get my drink or something, came back down to sit down. He was already finished and getting up to go back to the computer by the time I sat down. And I was like, is everything okay?
I didn't think anything of it. It was my brain was like working at 3 times speed or something.
Yeah, you were like in like a different like
it was,
I don't even know.
But
like I didn't know what to do with it
amazing.
either, because like that amount of money we had never dealt with before, ever. I mean, I was in college at the time.
We're like poor newly grads with student debt and stuff, and we're living in like this tiny little apartment.
Yeah, our rent was like what, $325 a month, like
four something.
It was like
around 400,
right around there. It was like a bad part of town. We were just like getting by. Like seriously, like I don't know. It was, and we didn't even realize it because we were, you know, like still in that age or whatever, and like in love, all that stuff. So, no. But it was just like, I don't know. It was surreal, and it still is surreal. Like, I don't know.
It was a really good experience. Especially like Kickstarter was great to work with. I would love to do something like that at some point in the future again, because it was just the amount of optimism behind it, and the amount of like positive comments that pour in, and people saying like, you got this, and you know, we're rooting for you.
Yeah, and I think that was just a huge turning point for us, because we have supportive families, but we were also a couple of nerds making a game about cats. Like my parents were super nice, but they're like, hey, so your husband quit his job to make a video game, you know, like
it was the first concrete proof that there was something to this, you know.
Yeah, there were definitely, yeah, and not that I necessarily felt like really judged by people, but we were just, I don't know, it was a weird.
You never know until you get out there and you see if the project has any merit, and it's like, well, you know, if all these people say it does, then it probably does, and it's definitely exciting to see.
Yeah,
that is so cool. All right, so my next question is, what was it like working with the freelance concept artists, Jenna Brown, Haru Purwanda, and Sarah Anderson? Because again, like I looked at their work before this interview, and their work is fantastic. And how was it like working with them, like having them to commission and stuff?
They all put out really good work for us. nice professional people, really, really high quality. I mean, the stuff that they were sending us, we were like, oh wow, this makes the game look too good. We got the stuff back, and like I got a piece back from Sarah Anderson, and I like made it my phone background for like a month because I was just so jazzed about it. It was really, really cool to see somebody else's interpretation of like the vision that had been in our minds for so long, and to like see it put down. When you get a piece of art, it's like, oh, like that's real, like I can see it.
Right.
And that was kind of incredible, because up to the point, the only art surrounding the project was the pixel art. And it's such a different experience. Particularly with Jenna Brown, it was really, really cool to work with her on that key art piece, because we both had been following A Hat in Time, which is a project that she had worked on as well.
Right.
For quite a while.
I was gonna say, I was surprised because like when I was looking, I was like, oh my gosh, she was the artist, like one of the artists for A Hat in Time. I'm like, that's so cool. That's still on my bucket list to play, by the way. I still need to play that.
It's really good.
Yeah, we were like fanboying and fangirling over it as well, because we kind of sent the email and we were like, oh, like I hope that she gets back and she's open to like commission ideas. And then she was like, yeah, that sounds great. What were you thinking? And we were like, oh shoot, we're gonna like
she replied to us. Okay.
We're gonna work with like an industry person on this. And
Yeah.
it was so exciting. She put out such good work on our behalf. And so just I have nothing but positive things to say about the process. It really was cool.
Yeah. And for me, like working with artists and finding artists, I guess, I spend a lot of time on Twitter or even like DeviantArt. I'm not an artist, but I appreciate art. And so I love trying to find people that I think would like understand, like just get cattails. And I don't know.
Well, and it is sort of a selective process, I guess, because we ended up finding quite a few people that we were interested in working with. And so we would send out we probably contacted between 10 and 12 different artists. And we would get responses to say like, hey, I'm not open to new work right now, but thanks for reaching out. And then we would get responses where they were like, yeah, I'd love to help you, but these are my prices. And we would say, oh, like that's not in our budget right now.
Right.
That whole thing too, I do want to say art is like almost always underappreciated. And so it was really hard and like devalued. There's a huge problem right now in the games industry, is the devalue of artists. But on the flip side of that, it was really difficult for us, like that being our first like big project, our first game. We didn't have much money. In fact, the Kickstarter money, and I think we also, so there's a whole nother story.
A little bit of seed money,
but that was through like a business plan competition, which is a story in itself.
Right, that was the what do you call it? The
Spark Tank.
Yes.
Yeah, which I can't remember, $2,000, I think.
Yeah.
So you can see our entire budget. That's very public.
Was $2,000.
Was $2,000 plus the Kickstarter. And that was like for everything.
Well, and then I put in I think $200 prior to any of that, but like
that's all we
that's
had.
Nothing.
That's all we had.
Nothing.
And so because that money was what we were living off of, and it was like to support artists and musicians, and that like made some really difficult choices for us early on, because every artist that we hired, we wanted to make sure that we were paying their full prices, and that we were like supporting them, or like paying what was appropriate, because that's another thing that you see is a lot of people being like, oh well, if the game does well, then I'll pay you some, but that's asking for them to put a risk. And so that was the whole thing in itself too, is finding
we wanted to do it as fair as possible, so pay up front,
but that also limited who we could work with too, because that was our whole budget.
Well, and to back up a little bit, I think that all of the artists we contacted, the prices they quoted us at were like reasonable, fair prices for their work, because some of them that we talked to were like way bigger, more prominent names with much larger portfolios out there on other game projects. And so I don't at all mean that to say that it was overpriced. I mean that to say that
that we just simply couldn't afford it.
Yeah, we weren't at that stage at that point.
Yeah.
Right. With much respect on supporting the artists out there, because it's a struggle. I go through it myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you can't devalue it, because it's everybody needs art,
Yeah, and it in itself is an entire discipline that we would have to like go learn how to do. We both know art to an extent, and Tyler made all the in-game art. But yeah, it's just such a discipline in itself to where you see some games that really are a work of art. But yeah, making a game is such like a balance of all of those things. So
right. That is awesome. So my next question is onto the music. I want to just say right now, Tormod Garvin, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Tormod Garvin.
I loved the soundtrack a lot. I bought it on Steam. I was like jamming out to it as I've been editing my video. Spring 1 is my favorite track. So I want to know how was it like getting him to compose the music, and also what are your guys' favorite tracks from the game too? Because I think that would be cool.
Those are both really good questions. I would say first off that Tormod Garvin and the accompanist he worked with pianist Alex Hill-Knight and a saxophonist, is that a word? Saxophone player? Naomi Sullivan. I don't know what the word for that is. But all three of them, they put out incredible work. It blew us away. We found Tormod through his SoundCloud, and we were immediately impressed because the music that he had put on there is his portfolio pieces sounded like N64, like Grant Kirkhope type stuff, and we thought oh, this is it. This sounds like classic Nintendo music. We want the over-the-top melodies and the cheesy, larger-than-life, happiness and the joy and the warmth of that.
Right.
And so we got in touch, and he was real easy to work with. We would have all these meetings that he himself was suggesting to us because he just wanted to put out such a good product. And so the fact that he was so passionate about the soundtrack made him really, really fun to work with, because we could tell that it wasn't just, it wasn't just a job to him, basically. It was this was his passion, and it was, something that he was going to do right. And so there were times that he would submit a track to us, and he'd be like, here, what do you think about this? And we would say, that's great, we'll sign off on it. And then later he would say oh, you know what, actually, I'm going to redo that because it's not good enough.
And we'd be nervous. We'd be like, oh no, we really liked that. What if, what is he going to do? And then he'd always come back with something better. And so, yeah, incredible.
That was an amazing time to work on that soundtrack. I agree. It turned out better than I could have ever imagined the soundtrack turning out. And on the topic of favorite tracks, I think for me, I really, really like Winter 1. There's a piano solo in that Alex Hill-Knight plays. It's just, oh man, I go back and I listen to that piece all the time. I just love it.
Oh man, you stole mine. I was gonna say Winter 1. I'll tell you my least favorite one.
Oh no.
Which is not against Tormod. It is the intro create your character screen. And the reason for that is one of my main jobs is I help present the game at conventions. And what that means for me is that I song. I hear that song way more. We're talking, because the convention can be 3 days, and those are 8-hour days. So listening to the
it's a 1 minute loop too, so it's really, really easy to hear the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, the 1 minute.
I was gonna say, I totally feel. I had this was a couple of months ago, so I assisted with my sister's senior project, because we're both animators. So I helped her with her senior project, and I did the voices for her stuff. But whenever I was in my campus's gallery, I just hear my voice again and again and again and again. I'm like, congratulations on your success, but I hate hearing my own voice.
Yeah.
It's something a lot like that.
It's awful when you have to listen to the same thing over and over and over. But yeah.
But that is awesome. I also, last thing was while literally yesterday while I was working on my video for Cattails, the spring track, I took, that vibing cat meme where it's like the cat just like bouncing back and forth. Literally, I took that bit and I'm like, I gotta send this to a few friends of mine just because the soundtrack was just, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'll pass on the compliments.
Awesome. So this is a fun question. So when I was doing my research, and again, I played I think I sunk about maybe 15 hours of the Cattails, and I started working on my review. Usually before I go into the whole development parts that I'm working on. But when I found that when I was doing my development stuff, and I realized that it was a married couple, and I'm like, that's adorable. That is wholesome. That is, and I was like, which again, I'm glad you guys participating in this interview today, because I'm like, that's so cool. I want to talk to them about how just how the game was made and all that. But I guess because hashtag relationship goals kind of thing. So what is it like as a married couple working together in the video game industry? And
oh boy, let me answer this one. So as you can tell, it's a little bit, I won't even say it's lopsided, because I know that what I do is important, but Tyler does a bulk of the actual game development and the game creation, and he is the creative brain behind the project. So, however, the problem is when you have a couple working on a game is, even though he is that, I think we were both equally passionate about it. And it really is our baby. We have kitty babies and a dog baby, and we have cattails as our third baby. We don't have any human babies. But yeah, so we're both really passionate about it, and that is the best thing, and it's also the hardest thing. It's really, really good because one of our biggest hobbies is we are avid walkers. We will both go on really long walks together. And I wouldn't call us active or fit people, but I guess we are. I don't know. We really
somewhat active.
We love to go on these long walks, and what those will almost always turn into, because what else do we have to think about? I don't know. Our child. And we would just talk about game design and what we should do. How should the kitten system work, or what do you think about this, or what? And we would just go back and forth for hours, just brainstorming and just creating, and being in that creative space, which is fantastic. But then it's also hard when one of us says something that isn't a good idea and we need time to reflect on if it's a good idea or not, So I might say something oh, we should, I can't even think of anything right now. A litter of kittens is 8 kittens. The cat should at least be able to have 8 kittens, something like that. And then Tyler would be like, no, that's way too much work. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're the developer. That makes sense. But still, kittens, just stuff like that.
I do think that illustrates to me it's amazing. I love it. It's a great collaborative process. But the challenge of it is finding the right work-life balance, essentially, because we are each other's coworker in a sense, and we work out of our house because Falcon Development is just us. And so trying to set those boundaries and say I'm only going to work in this room from this time to this time, and making sure that doesn't just overflow into the rest of your life is sort of an early challenge that we had to sort out, I guess. We would have these weeks where, for 12 hours a day, it was just work on cattails, from sunrise to sunset. And then we realized pretty quick, that's not a super healthy way to live, because you end up crashing and getting burnt out super fast. So finding that balance and saying I'm going to value my home life as much as I value this project that we're working on was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, and we got to the point where we'll just say I don't feel like talking about cattails right now, and we'll shut it down instantly. We know okay, let's we don't need it to encompass our whole lives. Yeah, so it is a weird balance thing. I do think for our relationship personally, though, because I worked in like a traditional job for a few years, like in the tech industry, and I was actually surprised by like how many of my coworkers I never saw their spouse. And I think for us, it kind of came naturally just in that we studied at a small college and we studied like very similar majors. I was the same major until I switched to the easier version of that major. But yeah, so for me, it's kind of hard to like imagine not working with my husband because we like did homework together for like 3 years.
When we share so many interests,
yeah,
that it's
we're both nerds. I know that's the thing too. I feel like a lot of my friends, or not all, I don't know. I have a mix of friends, but like some people I know, it's like one of them is a nerd and really passionate about like nerdy stuff, and the other one isn't at all, and they find like they do that separately, and they like have like their home life together and their passions are separate.
Right.
That's just, and we have separate passions, but a lot of ours
same.
overlap.
Right.
So
it kind of makes it easy. It comes natural in a way.
Yeah.
That is one that is adorable, and that is really cool.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
But my I guess a follow-up question to that was what was it also like, because I know this is a smaller kind of project thing, but what was it like with doing Pixel Penguin and Knights of Aria? Like, how was that?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, you did your research.
You really
Look
did your
at
research.
you.
I've yet to be asked about either of those questions in an email or an interview. Those were really interesting projects. So Pixel Penguin was the first time that I tried to build a game for mobile. And I was really into Flappy Bird at the time, which, who wasn't? And I was like, hey, I want to like try to make something somewhat similar just to like get it out there and see if I can do it. And so I whipped that up in like a week or something. And I was like, hey, go play this game. And then a bunch of my friends were like, hey, this is fun. And, they started competing on the leaderboard and stuff. And I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. Maybe I should like try that again. And so I was like, well, I've never really tried to make a strategy RPG, like a Fire Emblem light sort of an idea.
Right. I was gonna say, I watched the trailer to Knights of Aria, and I'm like, Fire Emblem vibes. Funny enough, like literally before I started playing Cattails, since Nintendo put the NES Fire Emblem up on their eShop, I was playing that. I got destroyed, and I'm like, I need to go and relax. And then I opened up Cattails for the first time, and then from like 11 p.m. to like 5 a.m., I'm like, did I just stay up all night playing Cattails?
That's funny. Yeah, it was definitely inspired by Fire Emblem, but I'm not like the biggest fan of Fire Emblem. I haven't really like played many of the games, so I was like, how can I take this concept and just make it like really simple and sort of casual? Because I wanted to put it on phones as well. So I got that out of the way over, I think it was a Christmas break or something. We had like a full month basically, because it was during college. Of no class, and I was like, well, I can use this month and try to like build a project and finish it up and all that. So I put it out there, and it was originally on Google Play, and got like some really good feedback, got some good reviews on that, and a couple thousand people ended up downloading it, which I didn't expect at all. I was like, that's really cool. I thought maybe like a dozen of my friends would try it out.
Right.
So then I put it onto itch.io, and I think it's still out there today. I think you could technically still download it on Windows. It's no longer on Android. You can't actually get it anywhere except itch, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it was just it was kind of just a hobby project where I was like, hey, I'm gonna try to build something semi-professional and see what happens with it, I guess.
That is cool. I'm gonna have to check that out after this interview, because I was trying to find like a trailer for I was gonna say, that's the Pixel Penguin one. Is that one still up too?
I honestly don't think it is. I'm not sure there's anywhere that's actually available.
Okay, because I was looking up for a trailer on YouTube, and I'm like, I can't find it, but that's totally fine. But that is
I mean,
so cool.
you can play through all of Knights of Aria probably in about an hour, so it's really not like not a super long game. I was just it was the first sort of businessy game development thing that I did, because when you sign up to be a developer with Google's Google Play services and their platform, you've got to have all your tax forms right, and you've got to sign up as a sole proprietor or whatever you end up being. And I was more interested in that side of it than I was really in the game. I was like, what does it look like to publish a game, not just to create a game?
Right.
And so I'm happy with how it turned out, but it's definitely a a simpler one.
That is cool. So 3 years since launch of Cattails, is there one thing that you guys wish you could like possibly change in like retrospect, or?
Oh, there's 10 billion things we can change.
I think overall we're very happy with how it turned out. It ended up basically functionally having all the features that we had initially thought up for the game. You know, it delivers all the promises from the Kickstarter, all that stuff. So on the whole, I think we're both really, really happy with how it turned out. But sure, there's some things that I wish, you know, had been done a little bit differently. Did you have something in mind?
I think it's just that it has been 3 years. So like if you were to look back at something that you did 3 years ago, and you know, we've continually been working on like making games. We've been working since the launch of Cattails, right? And so our skills are just that much better. And so it makes it's kind of like this weird bittersweet where like we're so proud of this. It's so good. We put so many hours into it. But at the same point, it's almost like
it could be better, you know.
At this point, it's so hard to not have a critical lens at it, you know, just because we're both better at what we do now.
Right.
In my humble opinion, I feel like we're gonna say that, and the next thing we do completely flop.
I think one concrete example that I have is that I did the development and I did the pixel art, and the development I was really comfortable with because that's sort of my passion. It's what I studied. I would consider myself an expert at like game development, but the art side of it is just sort of like a hobby thing. And so at the time that I made Cattails, I did all of the art by hand, by mouse, because I had never heard of a drawing tablet. I didn't know what a drawing tablet was. I'd certainly never used one. And so like all the portraits in the game and literally everything in that game was done by mouse.
That is so cool. I mean, I know that's a lot of work, but that is
not cool.
It's really bad.
It sounds like a nightmare, but learning about that is like, I have a Cintiq tablet right over here. This is my baby. I don't know what I would do without it. I had like an Intuos, like a standard drawing tablet before which a few months ago my graphics card died and I had to go back to it, and I'm like, I can't go back to this. I've been spoiled. I couldn't imagine having to make all the pixel art with a mouse though. That is impressive.
No, So I totally relate to that, because after publishing Cattails, a few months later, I bought an Intuos tablet, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, and I ended up liking it so much that I bought the full-size Cintiq, and so it's sitting over on my desk here too. And I cannot imagine doing game development without the tablet at this point.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool to hear though, just like the story behind that. Now, when I was looking at the Kickstarter, I think, was it 9 months after the release? But you guys sold over 10,000 copies of Cattails. Like, how did that feel? And also, if there's like a more accurate number to like today's standards, if you guys have that. But how was it like knowing you sold over 10,000 copies of Cattails?
It was incredible.
Really affirming. Affirming is the best word I can think of. Just like to see our hard work. Because a lot of people will put their hard work out there, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, in order to have something good happen to you, you have to put the work into it, you know? Like, you can't just be like, oh, I wish that something incredible would happen to me, but it never will. You have to actually put in the work and get it out there and hope for the best. And to see our work, like, actually succeed was just such a huge relief after how much like we put into it.
Well, how much risk there was with it too, because I literally quit my job to pursue it, so it was like, wow, like all these people believe in the project enough that they would be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think it was hard because we both studied like traditional computer science, tech industry stuff. And for someone to say, like out of college, say, hey, instead of going into the tech industry and getting like your job, because like there's a lot of well-paying jobs in that field too, to instead say, hey, I have this passion and we're going to pursue this instead, is a way more difficult decision than it sounds. You know, it's like, oh, well, of course you choose passion over working a traditional job. Who wants to do that? But I think that once you get to that age and you start looking at your student loans and you start looking at, oh my gosh, this is like what life costs, I guess. That was just such a difficult decision for us, that like to see it actually succeed. Yeah, it was, I can't find the words for that.
It felt like winning the lottery, you know. It was like, oh, like we did it somehow, you know, against all odds.
That is awesome. Again, congratulations to you guys on your success on that, because I couldn't imagine like kind of gambling all of the like financial income and all that. Like I
thank you. Appreciate that.
So my next question is there any possibility on a PlayStation and Xbox port of Cattails in the future?
I mean, it's definitely something we've considered. We've had a number of requests, particularly from PlayStation players who have said like, hey, like, have you ever thought about bringing this here? It's probably unlikely for Cattails, but it's something we would definitely consider in the future, if that makes sense. I think that for Cattails specifically, Switch is the right place for it. It has the right audience.
I think so too.
So we're probably not going to bring that to other platforms at this time, but we're, as a studio, we're definitely not closed to working with Microsoft and Sony.
Yeah, for that, it's just like the amount of work that it takes to port to another console.
The Switch, to get Cattails from PC just to Switch, it was, let's see, probably like 8 months, and that was rushed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So my next question is, this is kind of like a general question, but I guess it's kind of like, how is like, you know, the whole COVID virus affected like development and life and all that on your end?
I mean, in terms of development, really, it hasn't changed too much, because the people that we work with via Discord, and we work with them via Skype. So that's been fortunate. That hasn't shooken us up too much. And separately from that, because we work out of the house, it's like our work hasn't really been disrupted. So I feel very fortunate that it hasn't really impacted us.
Yeah, I think that being a game developer, you're kind of uniquely situated to where social distancing, we're introverts. We've been doing this for years.
We never leave our house.
Yeah, so overall, we honestly haven't been affected too much in that way. And we've just been in a really great situation to where we can work around social distancing and do everything to stay safe and not go out.
That's great to hear. So I guess before I get to my last question for the evening here, I want to know if you guys have any questions for me at all, about Cattails or whatnot.
Who did you date in the game?
Okay, so I initially I was a little confused. I do kind of mention this a bit in my review, but I wasn't fully aware about which cat was dateable in the game. I tried to go for Delta, and I was kind of confused. Gotcha. I gave her a bunch of roses, and she told me no, and I was just like, okay.
Like, what am I doing wrong?
What am I doing wrong? And then I looked at the wiki, and it's like, it has to have the heart in the corner, and I was like, oh. So I went with Robin, which I went with the Mountain Clan territory for that game, and then I had my kittens, which I will say I did the whole marriage thing in like the post-game content wise, so it was kind of like I kept on playing, but it was also around the time where I wanted to experience what it was like having the kittens in the game, but I didn't get the full like getting them to level 10. I took over the whole map though. I painted the whole map.
Oh, nice.
Wow!
In my custom colonies, so
that takes some time.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I really like about Cattails is there's just so many different things that you can do in it to where it's so interesting. You can tell a lot about a player by like what they did in the game, you know, because like some people don't touch the territory system at all. They're like, oh yeah, I mean, I knew you could do that, but like I wouldn't, you know, like bother taking over the territory. And then other people are like, it's a dating sim, you know, like they're to date every cat. So it's just, yeah, that's fun.
It's really funny to hear you mention the issue where you didn't know which ones were dateable too, because that's probably the most common feedback that we get, and it's good feedback because it's something
so true.
that it's so true. It is an issue. It's one of those flaws where it's like I can't look at it without seeing that that thing in it. And yeah, so that's definitely one of those areas that I would go back and change that a little bit.
Gotcha. That is again like the dating part. I was like that was fun to do. I will say, and again, I kind of briefly go about this. I was not super crazy about the combat, but it was still like I still had fun with it. But it was like
it's very simple.
Yeah.
But again, it was still fun. I got like there was like this old MMO. This is like this old Pokemon Mystery Dungeon MMO that I used to play. It was like a fan made one, but it was kind of like you just kind of spam the attack buttons to kill the other Pokemon, and like playing Cattails. I'm like this sleeper agent soldier thing where I'm like, this reminds me of that MMO I played like 9 years ago.
That is so funny and so really great for me to hear, because that's something that's like a feedback that I've told Tyler before, like because he's into an MMO, he's into Lord of the Rings Online, and that was one of my early feedbacks to Cattails all the time. Like, it feels too much like an MMO. I don't like that there's these abilities. It's too MMO because
it's just super simple combat, and then there's some additional abilities, and that's it's kind of it's almost turn-based in a way. It's like there's not a lot you can do there. I had another question for you as well. I watched some of your videos when you sent the interview request because I was curious about your channel. The little fox animation in that is that hand animated by you?
I use Adobe Character Animator. In fact, actually, while with this review, I'm replacing my camera footage here. You guys get the exclusive access to see the man behind the fox, but yeah, so. I use Adobe Character Animator. It was this fox that I made for it was a separate animation I did like 2 years ago. It was like this like zoo themed animation. Came in second place, by the way. It was a contest. It was awesome.
Nice, congrats.
But yeah, so my fox on the internet. That's like my mascot for the channel, because I wanted to do like I kind of took like there's a YouTuber named Arlo. I kind of took his like the inspiration where he has like a Muppet character as like the face of the channel, and I was like, that's cool. But yeah, I'm sorry, I completely derailed your question, but I use it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, even before we did this interview, I was like, hey, just like I was like telling Tyler, like, just so you know, there's gonna be a chance. I don't know, he could be a talking fox during this interview, so just be prepared for that, you know. Like, I wasn't sure like if you had like something like already like, but that was, so that's I
was debating about it because like I could open up Character Animator and have like my screen share thing set to him, but I was like, it might be that. But I'm gonna edit him like in post, so
right.
Cool.
I wanted to ask about it because I thought it was really cute. Yeah, it was really good. Very well done. So
thank you. I appreciate that. But this again, so my last question for you guys today and is, as game developers, what advice would you give to somebody who also wants to get into like game development someday and make video games?
I can go off on this one. I can go now. I would say number one, find what your strengths are and really focus on that. That is really hard to make games alone, and that's something that we have been learning like more and more, that if you want to create something good, it's best to work with other people and find what people are best at and add them on. So like if you are really good at art, then get better at art, just keep working at your discipline, and also make fan stuff. That's how both of us kind of got started. With Tyler, it was a bunch of like Mario fan stuff when he was a kid. And with almost everyone that we've hired, like Tormod, he had music that was inspired by How to Train Your Dragon, and I love that movie. So like we found him because of some of that stuff, because it was essentially like fan inspired stuff. Same with artists. So if you are like passionate about something, it usually comes through in your art. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of game developers, a lot of stuff, like we're all just nerds. And so if you nerd out on something, there's a good chance I'm gonna nerd about it too. And it's just, yeah. So for that, like, yeah, I don't know, there's that part. And then if you want to be a developer, I did do like traditional schooling for like programming. And that's what I would recommend for developing, is learn how to program. So maybe even before you jump into game dev stuff, or like while you're jumping into game dev stuff, learn how to be a developer, learn how to program, maybe take a JavaScript online course. And it's not going to be fun. I compare it to kind of like Sudoku puzzles, you know, like that little puzzle with all the numbers.
Oh, I love Sudoku.
And like for some people, they can do it all day and they love it. And and that's, for most programmers, that's what programming feels like. It's like you solve this problem and it feels so good. For other people, why would you stare at numbers and boxes all day? Like that sounds like a chore. And so you just kind of have to try it out and see like what type of is that something you're going to enjoy? Yeah, I don't know.
And I would add on an additional piece of advice that is basically that game development is getting more and more accessible. It's like super accessible as it is, and it's just getting more and more available to everybody. And I think that's wonderful. You know, when I started out, I started with Game Maker because it was the most accessible tool, and there was plenty of resources for me to dive into that. But I go out there today and I look around like what's available to beginners, and I see all the video tutorial series and I see all the different tools you can pick from. And it makes me so happy to see that like so many people have invested all of this time and resources into letting other people into this hobby and this industry. And it's almost like where music was a couple decades ago, when like distribution started to become a thing. And, you know, if you had a guitar and you were really good, you could sort of get out there and find a niche for yourself. I think it's sort of headed that way. Probably in the next decade or so, we'll see it, you know, getting more and more like that. And I would say to anybody who's just starting out that that's a really like encouraging sign that, you know, you can get out there and you can do something, and you might not make, you know, the next Skyrim, but you can make something, and that's really, really cool and kind of fun.
Right. That is awesome. But again, I want to thank you guys again, like sincerely. Like I really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for being the first developers I ever got to interview for my channel. I'm excited to make. There's gonna be a drawing for Cattails by me, as well as I'm gonna probably do a second one for this interview too, just for funsies. So, but again, I really want to thank you guys for coming on to my thing here today. And if there's anything you want to plug in, if there's any other projects you might be working on that you want to talk about, by all means.
Yeah, well,
I have some self-promo.
Yeah, you should.
No shame self-promo time. I started a blog this COVID season. It's called Her Own Game. And it's about how, since like I didn't do like any of the development stuff for Cattails, I just really, for myself and to prove to myself, because I am a programmer. That's what I did full time, like prior to more Cattails. I don't know. I've done a lot of different stuff. So just proving to myself that like I can do it as well, that I can make a game. And it's going to be a journey, because I'm going to be learning in art and maybe music. It's going to be a fun ride. So check out my blog.
What's the URL for that?
It's herownGame.com.
Awesome. I'm gonna include a little visual to go along with the. I'm gonna have
Sweet.
fun adding some visual effects to this. So, but yeah, that's so cool. Tyler, do you have anything you want to plug in as well, or?
Yeah, the other thing I would say is if you're interested in Cattails or anything that we might do in the future, go ahead and follow us on Twitter. We're at Cattails Game, and then I'm at Falcon Develops. She's at BeccaRuth11. If you follow us there, you know, Twitter's really where we tend to like put out any breaking news or things of that nature. So that's definitely where you can find all the latest from us. And then I also want to say thanks for having us on. I mean, honestly, it was a really good time. It was nice to meet you, and we're glad that we were able to do it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I was because when I emailed you guys on, I think it was New Year's Eve or so, I was like, all right, that's when I was doing my research and everything, and I was like, all right, you know what? I want to see if I can have these two on because I want to hear everything you guys have to say about Cattails. And so, now when you guys responded back on Monday, I was like, they responded.
Yeah, sorry for the delay there. We had taken a few days for the holidays there, and then I checked my email. I'm like, oh shoot, that was a couple days ago.
Yeah, it's all good. I figured because it's the weekend, it's also New Year's, so you know.
Yeah, and we also like, I don't know, I wouldn't say we're somewhat selective too. I mean, we watched a few of your videos before we decided to. So yeah, you know that we genuinely enjoyed them. They were really
high
good
quality stuff. So.
And you're into the type of stuff that we're into. We're like, oh yeah, he's one of us. We're good.
That's awesome. Thank you. But yeah, I'll tag you guys on Twitter whenever our video, the videos are up. I'm gonna upload both at the same time, so feel free to check those out. It's gonna be fun. And I lost a train of thought, but again, thank you both so much for participating in this interview.
Absolutely,
yeah, for sure.
And you should send me the link to the videos when they go up because we definitely want to check those out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And also, no pressure. Like, we respect you as an artist. So if you go back and you watch this and you're like, wow, that Beka girl looks like an idiot, I'm not gonna put that on my channel. Like, you're an artist. You do your thing. Like,
piece it together. However.
Yeah, do whatever.
You guys are great. No, you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sweet. Yeah, this is good.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Cool.
Yeah, you too.
All right, take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.